Really good. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. It means the world to me to see so many faces looking back at me, especially so many faces that have been there on the journey. I really appreciate you ladies and George.
All right, so speaking of the journey, let's talk specifically about the journey that finally got you to finally releasing the book. Because some of us have been after you for a while now to finally put something on paper.
When I imagined my name in print, I thought I was going to have a cute little chapbook, maybe 15 poems, possibly themed, probably stuff that everybody seemed to react to in a favorable way, and then my name would be in print. J. Scott Wilson was after me for a really long time, along with the rest of you, to put something in print, but I was dragging my feet because nothing really felt right. And then I got out of the second domestic violence situation that I had found myself in. And to get through that, I wrote myself through it. And I read a couple of the pieces to a few other people, and they said, wow, that resonated with me. That stuck. Can I have a copy? And I started realizing that through healing myself through the writing, I could also heal other people. So it was not the book I imagined that I would put out, but it was the book that my dreams whispered was needed.
So when you finally decided, okay, I'm going to start putting these things together, now you have this massive body of work, which is not just a body of poems, it's your experiences laid out there in front of you on paper. How did you go about choosing what would and what would not end up in the final copy?
My idea initially of that 15-poem chapbook turned into a 53-poem book.
Right.
That's about half of what I had to pare down. And that's because the book deals with trials besides domestic violence that everybody faces in life. Everything from body issues to depression to judgment for things people can't see about you, like a hidden medical condition that's not a missing arm. Things that we all go through, and you either find your way out through healing or changing perception of your own. Sometimes it's saying, fuck you, and not worrying about what other people think. But a lot of people, for some reason, don't get to that spot without somebody telling them it's okay. So I tried to pare down first by topic and pick the best of each topic. And then I had several talks with different people in the community that are friends turned family, and some of those talks ended up in the book because of the reaction that I got from them. It was hard to pare down everything. I probably have enough for a second book. And while my next book is going to be a novel centered on dispelling myths around the homeless, I am not done with poetry books either.
Beautiful. So, what didn't make it into the book that was really difficult for you to cut?
The biggest challenge I had, that's probably a tie with domestic violence, was when I lost my son. I was pregnant, had been told I could not have children, suddenly found myself pregnant, and made it 6 months through the pregnancy before I went into labor and had him, and he passed away in 15 minutes. That was really hard. Leaving the hospital with something that was a box with notes and letters of who to call if I needed help was not what I envisioned. So the poems that I had about that, I made the decision to put one letter that I had written to him on what would have been his 10th birthday. And the other ones did not make it into the book because I think they're going to be in a different one. Other things that didn't make it into the book, I had one that was about a family member, and that was too personal. They didn't want it shared. And I generally do not ask permission to put my poems out there, but this was so personal that I decided to ask, and they said, no thank you. So that didn't get in. So
That was really thoughtful of you to ask. I don't know that most writers would have asked permission to put their own poem in their own book.
I have one in here that is called Wonderland, and it's about my sister and the true story of her anorexic bulimia and how it could really destroy a family. I called my mother. I read her the poem. I explained that this is one of the things we don't talk about as a society. It's hush-hush. We body shame. We drop information on a diet or a YouTube video for exercise at the breakfast table for somebody, but we don't, as a society, very much talk about what that kind of body shaming can do. And for other people to heal and get help and recognize it in other people or in themselves, it has to be discussed. And I told my mom that. And she said, "You're going to read this on stage, aren't you?" And I said, "Well, I have already, but I'm going to put it in my book. And I just wanted to warn you." And she was quiet for a minute. She said, "It's a good piece." She goes, "And I understand why you're doing it." And I said, "Now, you realize I'm not asking permission, right?" And she said, "Honey, you don't ever ask me for permission." So that one did make it in. But it was, the other one was a one-on-one piece with someone, and it was going to be identifying. And they weren't comfortable. And I love them, so.
So how long exactly have you been working
On the book?
on it? Yeah. And I don't mean like, obviously not writing, but from the time that you decided to collect it.
We took a class. Jay Scott and I took a class headed by didnt, who, he couldn't be here tonight, but he is an incredible person, has traveled all over the country in Europe and been acting his way through life since he was in his early 40s and decided that journalism and an office was not going to be for him. So he turned his art of acting and poetry into his livelihood. He was teaching the workshop, and we were specifically writing the workshop for putting out your first book, like how the process works. Jay Scott was the publisher of my book and several other people's in this room. He was explaining, okay, you have to think about who your audience is and how you're going to pare it down. And I thought I was going to have this 15-poem chapbook, maybe themed with fairy tales, like the truth behind them, in modern day. And I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And he says, "That's it?" He says, "That's like 15 poems." And I said, "Well, yeah." And he goes, "I think you have something else in there." And at the time, I was going through having just left and the process of leaving that final situation. And I started bringing some of the things I was writing into the class. And Dee Dee said, "Are you writing this for you? Or are you writing this for other people? Because this could really help." And that's when I made my decision. I started thinking about it a little more from that perspective.
How many drafts did you go through before you settled on it?
They're gonna kill me.
I'm sure Jay probably wanted to.
No. When I handed the book to Jay, I had already done all of my editing, all of my paring down and cutting, and went through everything, spell check, grammar check, and handed it to him and said, "Okay, it's been like 3.5 years since you asked me to put out a book. This is the book. When can it be in print?" And he asked me the same thing. He says, "Do you want anybody to edit it?" I said, "No, I've already done that." And I had gone through it with a fine-tooth comb, both from my own perspective and looking at it as if I was sitting in a New York executive chair, and I was rough on myself, rougher than I thought I would be actually, and cut a lot and changed a lot, reordered a lot. So one final draft that I handed in.
Okay.
Never in a million years.
Okay.
So something that we like to do here Make some noise if you guys are familiar with the show Inside the Actors Studio. Anybody?
Ooh, that's my show.
Okay, cool. So at the end of that show, James Lipton, he does the same 10 questions with whoever he's interviewing that particular week. The questionnaire originally came from a French interview show called Bouillon de Couture. If I'm not mistaken, that roughly translates to culture soup. And the questionnaire was written by a man named Bernard Pivot. So every time one of us has a project release, whether it's an album or a book, it's kind of become our thing here at the venue too to do the same 10-point questionnaire, after which I'll turn it over to you guys. So, first question. What's your favorite word?
There's so many to choose from.
I know, ask a poet what their favorite word is.
Actually, this word is fun to say, and I challenge you guys just to do it at any point you need to laugh or kind of feel like your mouth needs to work. Cotton mouth or just waking up in the morning. Legumes. Say it. It uses all parts of your mouth. It's pretty cool. I like that word.
What's your least favorite?
Ooh, least favorite word is twat.
Yeah, that one's up there. What turns you on?
Ooh.
Oh.
Legumes.
I would say variety turns me on.
Look at him.
What turns you on?
Look at his beat right.
What turns me off? Let's see. What turns me off? I think arrogance coupled with ignorance. That is a huge turnoff for me. I absolutely can't stand it. And it's been that way for a while. At 8 years old, I got out of a moving vehicle because someone made a comment in that gesture.
What sound or noise do you love?
Wind chimes, without a doubt.
Nice one. What sound or noise do you hate?
You know that noise that the Chamberlain makes in the Dark Crystal? That I can't stand that. It freaks me out. I mean, I saw the original when I was little and used to think he was going to come out of my closet at night. As an adult, I watched the series and I had to pause it because I'm like, no, not that noise again.
What's your favorite curse word?
I think fuck because of the versatility of it.
Other than your own, what's a profession you would like to try?
Tornado chaser, without a doubt. Yes.
I'm just like,
I have warned my mother, who lives in Arkansas, that should I ever win the lottery, I want to use her home as home base and then go out to Oklahoma and Kansas and Missouri to do tornado chasing. And she promptly said, I love you, but I hope you never hit the lottery.
What profession would you not want to try?
Anything where you're locked up in like a windowless, airless room. I need light and people.
All right, last question. If heaven exists, what would you want God to say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Let's have a chat.
CJ Expression.